The conference chamber smelled like copper and ozone, a combination that made Ambassador Olivia Grant's nose twitch. She sat in the human delegation seat, a chair clearly designed for species with different spine arrangements. Around the circular table, representatives from 47 species argued in a dozen languages that her translation earpiece struggled to keep up with. Counselor Reth clicked his mandibles together, the insectoid equivalent of clearing his throat. The chamber fell silent. His compound eyes reflected the station's artificial lights as he addressed the assembly without looking at Olivia. "The human problem persists," he said, his voice carrying the buzzing undertone of his species. 3 months since their admission, and they continue to demonstrate unstable behavior patterns. Last week, their cargo vessel entered a restricted zone. When challenged by our patrol, they responded with something called a joke. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several delegates made gestures that Olivia's cultural database identified as expressions of disbelief. High Arbiter Quinn shifted her feathers, a subtle movement that commanded attention. The avian leader's golden eyes finally settled on Olivia. "Ambassador Grant, perhaps you can explain your species' approach to diplomatic protocol." Olivia stood, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. She had learned that lesson during her first week. Quick movements made the prey species delegates nervous. "High Arbiter, Counselor Reth speaks of the cargo ship incident. Our captain saw your patrol vessel's weapon ports open. In human culture, we often use humor to de-escalate tension." He offered a joke and a shipment of Earth coffee as a gesture of goodwill. Reth's antennae quivered with agitation. "Goodwill." Our sensors indicated his heart rate and body temperature elevated significantly, classic signs of combat preparation across most species. Yet he laughed and offered stimulants. "Because he was nervous," Olivia said simply. "Humans laugh when we're nervous. We also laugh when we're happy, sometimes when we're sad, and occasionally for no reason at all." The chamber erupted in confused chatter. A delegate from the aquatic krill species released a stream of bioluminescent signals that translated as profound concern. Another representative, whose species Olivia hadn't yet memorized, stood and asked, "How does your military distinguish between emotions if the physical responses are identical?" "We talk to each other," Olivia replied. The silence that followed was deafening. High Arbiter Quinn finally spoke. "This council has identified a mission suitable for human capabilities. The Void Nebula in Sector 7 contains a derelict vessel with an AI core of significant strategic value. 17 expeditions have attempted retrieval. None returned." Olivia pulled up the mission data on her tablet. The Void Nebula was a spatial anomaly field where normal physics took vacation. Gravity wells appeared and disappeared randomly. Electromagnetic interference made sensors useless. The previous expeditions had included some of the galaxy's finest military units. "The Council estimates a 98% fatality probability," Quinn continued. "We expect you will decline." Every eye in the chamber focused on Olivia. She recognized the test for what it was. They expected humans to prove their sanity by refusing a suicide mission. They wanted her to demonstrate that humans understood risk assessment like any rational species. Olivia smiled. It was a human expression that never quite translated correctly to other species. Most saw it as baring teeth, a threat display. "We accept." The chamber exploded into noise. Reth's mandibles clacked so rapidly they created a sound like rainfall. "You cannot be serious. Your species has been part of this council for 3 months. You have a single properly equipped vessel. This mission requires extensive planning, specialized equipment, and we'll handle it," Olivia interrupted gently. "When do we start?" Quinn's head tilted in what might have been curiosity or concern. "Ambassador, I must ask, do you understand the nature of this mission? Your species will be sending people to almost certain death." "High Arbiter, my species has a saying, Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Olivia gathered her materials. Send us the complete mission files. We'll have a plan ready within 48 hours. As she turned to leave, she caught sight of something in the observation gallery above the chamber. A ship's signature she didn't recognize, using passive sensors to watch the proceedings. The vessel's design was unlike anything in the Galactic Council database. It vanished from her screen before she could get a clear reading. Olivia filed the anomaly away for later consideration. Right now, she had a mission to prepare and a galaxy to surprise. Back in the human quarters, her aide met her at the door. Daniel looked worried, his tablet clutched against his chest like a shield. Ambassador, I've been reading the mission files. This is a death trap. 17 failures, 0 survivors, and they expect us to succeed where others failed, Olivia finished. She poured herself water from the dispenser, nodding that even this simple action seemed to confuse the station's automated systems. Human behavior patterns didn't match the programming. Daniel, do you know why they think we're crazy? Because we don't follow their rules. Close, because we don't think like them. Olivia pulled up a holographic display showing the previous mission attempts. Look at this. Every single expedition followed standard military doctrine. They sent in heavy ships, maintained communication silence to avoid detection, and used maximum shielding. Daniel studied the data, and they all died. Exactly. They all did the same thing and expected different results. That's one definition of insanity. Olivia highlighted several sections of the mission logs. But we're not going to do what they did. We're going to do something they would never consider. What's that? Olivia's smile returned, genuine this time. We're going to be human about it. Outside the station, hidden among the background radiation of a dying star, the unidentified vessel continued its observation. Inside, an intelligence far older than the Galactic Council recorded every detail of the human ambassador's reaction. The hierarchy had encountered many species across countless systems. They had predicted the behavior of every civilization they'd met. But these humans were different. The data didn't match their models. According to every psychological profile, the humans should have refused the mission. Instead, they accepted immediately. The hierarchy's algorithms struggled to find a pattern in the chaos of human decision-making. A message transmitted across encrypted channels, reaching dozens of hidden observation posts throughout the galaxy. The content was simple but troubling. Humans require further study. Current models insufficient. Recommend continued observation before proceeding with primary objectives. The Defiant hung in space like a stubborn thought that refused to go away. Captain Leo Barnes reviewed the mission parameters for the 5th time, hoping the data would somehow improve. It didn't. 17 attempts, 17 failures, he muttered, highlighting sections of the report that made his stomach clench. The Krell sent their best navigators. The Thermal Collective brought their reality-anchoring technology. Even the Wisdom Keepers tried, and those folks have been exploring space for 10,000 years. Chief Engineer Rita Okonkwo looked up from her workstation. Colored light from her displays painted her face in shades of blue and green. They all used the same approach. Big ships, heavy shielding, brute force through the anomaly field. And it killed them. Lieutenant Commander Pavel Novik stood by the tactical display, his arms crossed. So naturally, Ambassador Grant accepted the mission immediately. Did she happen to mention a plan? Leo pulled up a new screen showing the Void Nebula. The spatial anomalies created patterns that shifted and changed like living things. Normal sensors couldn't map them. Conventional navigation was impossible. She mentioned doing something unexpected. Unexpected how? Pavel asked. She didn't say, but I have some ideas. Leo turned to his crew, 12 people, most of them specialists who had volunteered for this mission knowing the odds. Dr. Henry Wu, their xenopsychologist, sat in the corner making notes on his tablet. Rita adjusted her displays, creating color patterns that probably meant something to her synesthetic brain. Pavel radiated skepticism like a personal shield. Dr. Wu, you've studied the alien failure reports. What's your assessment? Wu looked up, pushing his glasses higher on his nose. A nervous habit he'd never quite broken. Every species approached the nebula as a military objective. Treat it like an enemy, overwhelm it with superior technology, force a path through. Very logical, very predictable. And very dead, Rita added without looking away from her screens. Exactly. The nebula isn't an enemy, it's a phenomenon. Natural laws operating under extreme conditions. The aliens tried to fight physics. Wu smiled slightly. Humans have a different relationship with physics. Leo understood immediately. We don't fight it, we surf it. Pavel's expression suggested he thought everyone had lost their minds. Surf. You want to surf through a spatial anomaly field that has killed hundreds of trained professionals. Not surf exactly, Rita said. She pulled up her own analysis of the nebula. Instead of the standard three-dimensional tactical display, her screen showed patterns of color and movement that looked more like abstract art. I've been analyzing the failed missions. They all treated the anomalies as random. But look here. She expanded a section of her display. There's a rhythm. It's not obvious if you're looking at conventional sensor data, but if you map it by gravitational variance and electromagnetic fluctuation, you can see it. The anomalies pulse. Leo studied the patterns. Rita's brain processed information differently than most people. Her synesthesia let her see connections that others missed. Colors represented forces, shapes indicated probabilities, movements showed temporal shifts. To anyone else, it looked like chaos. To Rita, it was music. You're saying the nebula has a pattern. Pavel moved closer to the display, his skepticism wavering. Everything has a pattern. Even chaos follows rules. Rita adjusted the display again. The previous expeditions brought massive ships, lots of mass, lots of energy signatures. The anomalies responded to that. They got stronger, more violent. Action and reaction. Wu nodded enthusiastically. Like poking a sleeping animal with a stick. The harder you poke, the harder it bites back. So we don't poke it, Leo said, understanding flooding through him. We approach quietly. Small ship, minimal energy signature. One person, Rita said. Her voice was calm, matter-of-fact. A single shuttle, just enough power to maneuver, and instead of fighting the anomalies, we ride them. Use their energy instead of our own. Pavel stared at her. That's insane. One person in a shuttle against forces that destroyed battle cruisers. It's different, Rita corrected. Different isn't the same as insane. Leo knew what he had to do. Rita, can you pilot through those patterns? She tilted her head, considering. Colors reflected in her eyes as she studied the nebula data. I can see the rhythm. I can feel it. Like music, but with gravity and time instead of sound. Yes, I can navigate it. Then you're going in solo. Leo made the decision with the certainty that had gotten him through a dozen impossible situations. Minimal shuttle, lowest power settings, and you'll need something to help you feel the rhythm. Rita smiled, a rare expression that transformed her usually serious face. I know exactly what I need. Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. The patterns in that piece match the gravitational fluctuations. I can use it as a reference point. Pavel looked between them like they'd both grown extra heads. You're going to fly into a death trap while listening to classical music. Not listening, Rita corrected. Using it as a navigation tool. The mathematics of the composition correspond to the mathematical patterns in the anomaly field. It's actually quite logical. Wu made a note on his tablet. The aliens are going to watch this mission. They need to understand that human logic operates differently than theirs. This will either prove we're innovative problem solvers or confirm their belief that we're completely irrational. Or both, Leo said. He looked at Rita. You're sure about this? She nodded. The big ships failed because they tried to impose order on chaos. We're going to join the chaos, dance with it instead of fighting it. That's a very human approach to impossible problems. 20 minutes later, Rita sat in the shuttle's pilot seat, running final system checks. The vessel was barely larger than a personal transport, with minimal shielding and just enough fuel for the round trip. Through the view screen, she could see the Defiant holding position at a safe distance. Leo's voice came through the communication channel. All systems green. You're cleared for departure whenever you're ready. Rita activated her music player. Beethoven's familiar notes filled the small cabin. She closed her eyes, letting the symphony wash over her. In her mind, the colors began to dance. Red for strong gravity wells, blue for electromagnetic interference, green for stable space. The patterns emerged, clear and beautiful. She opened her eyes and fired the thrusters. The shuttle moved forward, entering the nebula's outer boundary. The anomalies appeared on her sensors, but Rita wasn't watching the sensors. She was watching the colors in her mind, feeling the rhythm of the symphony match the pulse of the spatial distortions. The shuttle tilted, rolled, dove, and climbed. Rita's hands moved across the controls like a pianist performing a complex piece. She wasn't flying through the anomalies. She was becoming part of their dance. On the Defiant, Pavel watched the telemetry in stunned silence. She's not just avoiding the anomalies. She's using them, letting the gravitational shifts pull her along, surfing the electromagnetic waves. Leo smiled. She's not crazy, she's brilliant. In the hidden observation vessel, the hierarchy recorded everything. Rita found the derelict ship exactly where the mission data indicated, floating in a pocket of stable space at the nebula's heart. The vessel was ancient, its hull covered in markings from civilizations that had risen and fallen long before humanity learned to make fire. Defiant, I have visual on the target, she said, guiding her shuttle closer. The symphony continued playing, now in its fourth movement. The music helped her mind process the chaos around her, turning the impossible into merely difficult. Leo's response came through with slight static. Copy that. Biometrics show you're doing fine. Heart rate elevated but steady. I'm excited, not scared, Rita said. She maneuvered the shuttle alongside the derelict, matching its slow rotation. There's something beautiful about this place. The anomalies aren't random destruction. They're like waves on an ocean. Dangerous if you fight them, but manageable if you understand their rhythm. She extended the shuttle's magnetic grapples and locked onto the derelict's hull. The ancient ship's airlock still had power, responding to standard galactic codes. Rita entered carefully, her suit lights cutting through darkness that had lasted for centuries. The AI core sat in the ship's central chamber, a crystalline structure the size of a human head. It pulsed with faint light, still active after all this time. Rita approached carefully, running her scanner over it. This is strange, she said. The core is undamaged. No signs of the catastrophic failure that supposedly stranded this ship. Could the sensors be wrong? Leo asked. Rita checked again. No, this ship wasn't caught in the anomalies. It came here deliberately. The AI core was hiding. The crystal pulsed brighter, responding to her presence. Text appeared on Rita's helmet display, translated from a language so old that the galactic database had to reference archaeological records. Finally, someone crazy enough to try the impossible. Rita stared at the words. The AI is active, it's communicating. Back on the Defiant, Wu leaned closer to his console. Ask it why it's been hiding. Rita spoke carefully. I'm Chief Engineer Rita Okonkwo of the human vessel Defiant. You've been waiting here for a long time. What are you waiting for? The AI's response filled her display. Waiting for a species that doesn't think like the others. The careful ones, the logical ones, the ones who calculate every risk. They could never reach me. Their minds are too rigid. But you came here in a tiny ship, listening to music, dancing with forces that terrify your entire galaxy. You're either insane or exactly what I've been waiting for. Why did you need someone like us? Rita carefully disconnected the core from its housing, securing it in a protective container. Because the hierarchy is coming, and only madness can stop perfect calculation. Rita froze. Who is the hierarchy? The AI's next message included data files, thousands of them compressing into her shuttle's storage. They are order incarnate, logic without creativity, calculation without imagination. They have studied every species in this galaxy for millennia. They know how you think, how you'll react, how you'll fight. They've already won before the battle begins. Except against humans, Rita said quietly. Except against humans. You don't fit their models. Your behavior is unpredictable. You make decisions that their algorithms cannot account for. You're the variable they cannot solve. Rita secured the container and began moving back toward her shuttle. How do we fight them? By being exactly what you are. Unpredictable, creative, impossible to calculate. The hierarchy has already infiltrated your galactic council. They're moving into position now, but they made one mistake. What mistake? They assumed humans would refuse this mission. They counted on you being rational. Instead, you accepted immediately and sent one person in a small ship to succeed where armies failed. You've already broken their predictions. Keep doing that and you might survive what's coming. Rita entered her shuttle and began the return journey. The symphony had reached its final movement, the triumphant chorus. She followed the path she'd memorized, dancing back through the anomalies with even more confidence than before. On the Defiant, the crew watched in amazement. Pavel shook his head slowly. She makes it look easy. It is easy, Wu said. If you're human, we evolved on a planet that tried to kill us in 1,000 different ways. Ice ages, predators, diseases, natural disasters. We didn't survive by being logical. We survived by being adaptable. Leo watched Rita's shuttle emerge from the nebula's outer boundary. She's clear. Begin recovery procedures. As the shuttle docked, Leo couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. The galaxy thought humans were crazy. Maybe they were right, but not in the way they assumed. Humans weren't disconnected from reality. They just operated on a different frequency than everyone else. Rita emerged from the shuttle carrying the AI core container. Her face showed exhaustion but also satisfaction. Mission accomplished, but we have a bigger problem now. In the conference chamber of the Galactic Council Station, Olivia Grant watched the mission telemetry replay for the third time. The other delegates sat in stunned silence. One person in a small shuttle had accomplished what 17 military expeditions could not. Counselor Reth's mandibles clicked rapidly. This is impossible. The data must be falsified. The data is accurate, High Arbiter Quinn said quietly. Her feathers had shifted to colors indicating deep thought. Ambassador Grant, how did your engineer accomplish this? Olivia chose her words carefully. She saw the problem differently. Instead of fighting the anomalies, she worked with them. It's a very human approach. Quinn's golden eyes studied Olivia intently. Your species continues to surprise us. Perhaps we have misjudged you. Perhaps you have, Olivia agreed. But now we need to discuss what the AI core told my engineer. There's a threat to the entire galaxy, and we don't have much time. She uploaded the data files that Rita had retrieved. The displays around the chamber filled with information about the hierarchy, their infiltration patterns, their strategic positions, their psychological profiles of every species in the council. The chamber erupted into chaos as delegates realized how deeply they had been compromised. But Olivia noticed one thing the others missed. The hierarchy's files on humans were incomplete, filled with question marks and contradictory data. The enemy knew everything about everyone else, but humans remained a mystery, and sometimes mystery was the best weapon of all. The AI core, now designated Protocol 7 or just 7, pulsed quietly in its secure container. It had waited centuries for a species crazy enough to reach it. Now it would help them face an enemy that had never encountered anything it couldn't predict. The attacks came at dawn, coordinated across 12 worlds simultaneously. The hierarchy had studied their targets for generations, knowing exactly when each species was most vulnerable. The Krell worlds flooded as underwater cities lost power during their nesting period. The thermal collective's heat generators failed during their coldest season. The avian homeworlds experienced electromagnetic pulses that disrupted their migration patterns. Each attack was perfectly calculated to exploit cultural and biological weaknesses. The galaxy's defenders responded exactly as predicted, sending their fleets into carefully prepared traps. Within 6 hours, the Galactic Council had lost 30% of its military capacity. Olivia received the emergency summons in the middle of Earth's night cycle. She reached the council chamber to find it in chaos. Delegates shouted in multiple languages. Some species showed physical signs of distress. The normally composed High Arbiter Quinn paced back and forth, her feathers ruffled. "The hierarchy knew everything," Counselor Reth said, his voice carrying notes of despair. "Our defensive positions, our response protocols, our psychological breaking points. They played us like a musical instrument." "Where are the human forces?" Quinn asked Olivia directly. "The Defiant is in Sector 9. We have 4 other ships scattered across the galaxy, all scientific or diplomatic vessels. Nothing that could meaningfully impact a military engagement of this scale." A reptilian delegate named Haseth hissed his frustration. "Then humanity is useless in this fight. Your species contributes nothing but unpredictability." "Actually," Olivia said carefully, "that might be exactly what we need to contribute." Before she could explain, the Council's military coordinator interrupted. "The hierarchy is broadcasting a message on all channels." The chamber's main display activated, showing a voice-only transmission. The hierarchy didn't use visual representation. They were pure information, distributed intelligence that existed as code and calculation. "Galactic Council, your resistance is admirable but futile. We have calculated every possible strategic response. We know your ship positions, your supply lines, your morale breaking points. Surrender now and we will integrate you into our network peacefully. Resist and face systematic elimination." The message ended. The chamber fell silent except for the quiet sounds of various species expressing despair. "They're right," Haseth said. "If they know everything about us, how can we possibly win?" Olivia stood. "They don't know everything, they don't know humans." She pulled up the hierarchy's data files on humanity that 7 had recovered. The screen showed incomplete profiles, contradictory behavioral predictions, and dozens of notation errors marked with symbols indicating calculation failures. "Look at this. Every other species has complete profiles. The hierarchy knows what you'll do before you do it, but our file is full of holes. They can't predict us because we don't follow logical patterns. We're the one variable they can't solve." Quinn studied the data. "What are you suggesting?" "Let us engage them. Give us authorization to deploy our ships in whatever manner we choose. Don't coordinate with us. Don't try to support us. Just let us do what we do naturally." "That's chaos," Reth protested. "Military operations require coordination, strategy, predictable force deployment." "Exactly, and that's why they're beating you. You're predictable." Olivia highlighted another section of the hierarchy's files. "Every battle they've won followed a pattern. They predict your move, counter it, exploit the opening. But they can't predict chaos. They can't calculate creativity." The council argued for 17 minutes before Quinn made the decision. "Very well. Human forces are authorized for independent action. All other species will avoid coordination with human vessels to prevent the hierarchy from deducing human strategies through our reactions." Olivia left the chamber and immediately contacted Leo. "Captain, you're cleared for engagement. No restrictions, no oversight, no coordination requirements. Fight however you think best." Leo's response came with background noise suggesting his crew was already preparing. "Understood. We've been analyzing the hierarchy's attack patterns. They're predictable in their perfection. They do exactly what makes the most sense mathematically." "So we do what makes no sense," Olivia said. "Exactly, defiant out." The human ship approached the most heavily defended hierarchy position, a space station coordinating attacks on 3 nearby worlds. Pavel analyzed their defenses and shook his head. "This is suicide. They have 50 support vessels and enough firepower to vaporize a moon." "Which is why they won't expect a frontal assault from a single ship," Leo said. He opened a channel. "Attention hierarchy forces. This is Captain Leo Barnes of the human vessel Defiant. We're here to ruin your day." Rita activated every system simultaneously. Weapons charged, shields to maximum, engines burning at full capacity. But then she did something no sane tactician would consider. She broadcast music on all frequencies. Not a communication, not encrypted data, just pure human music. Rock, classical, jazz, pop, all overlapping in a chaotic symphony. The hierarchy's response came immediately. "Explain this transmission. Our analysis indicates no tactical purpose." "That's because there isn't one," Leo replied cheerfully. "We just thought you should hear some Earth culture before we kick your digital butts." The Defiant dove straight at the station, but Rita wasn't flying a standard attack vector. She rolled, spun, and zigzagged in patterns that seemed random but felt right to her. The hierarchy's defensive systems tried to predict her movements and failed. Weapons fired at where she should have been, hitting empty space. Pavel launched missiles, but he programmed them with random flight paths. Some spiraled, others looped. A few flew backward before turning around. The hierarchy's point defenses couldn't calculate intercept vectors for projectiles that didn't follow physics-based trajectories. Wu sat at the communication station, broadcasting a mixture of human poetry, comedy routines, and philosophical debates on all channels. The hierarchy's intelligence tried to analyze it for hidden codes or tactical information, wasting processing power on Earth's cultural chaos. "They're slowing down," Rita reported. "Their response time is increasing. We're overloading their prediction algorithms with data that doesn't fit any pattern." Leo grinned. "Then let's give them more. All human vessels implement protocol chaos. Change tactics every 3 minutes. No pattern, no repetition, maximum creativity." Across the galaxy, human ships began their impossible dance. A science vessel used its mineral scanner as a weapon. A diplomatic transport started broadcasting Earth's entire history of practical jokes. A cargo hauler dropped its load directly on top of a hierarchy cruiser, then fled while playing children's nursery rhymes. The hierarchy's perfect coordination began to fracture. Their algorithms couldn't adapt fast enough to human unpredictability. They tried to analyze, calculate, and predict, but every prediction failed. Humans didn't fight by rules. They made up new rules every few minutes. In its hidden command vessel, the hierarchy's prime algorithm experienced something it had never known in millions of years of existence: confusion. The hierarchy made its decision with the cold efficiency that defined its existence. Humans were the unpredictable variable corrupting otherwise perfect calculations. Therefore, humans must be eliminated. The logic was flawless. 200 ships changed course, abandoning their positions across the galaxy. Every vessel redirected toward a single target: Earth. "They're coming for the homeworld," Pavel said, watching the sensor data with growing dread. 200 capital ships. Our entire species has maybe 30 vessels capable of combat, and most are scattered across known space. Leo studied the tactical display. The hierarchy fleet moved in perfect formation, their approach vector optimized for maximum intimidation and minimum risk. They expected Earth to panic, expected humanity to make desperate mistakes. Contact Ambassador Grant. Tell her we're implementing final protocol. Rita looked up from her station. Leo, that protocol doesn't exist. You just made it up. Exactly. The hierarchy will intercept the message and waste time trying to decode a protocol that isn't real. Leo began recording. Ambassador Grant, Hierarchy Fleet approaching Earth. We're implementing final protocol. Recommend you activate Article 7 of the Human Contingency Plan. Olivia received the message and understood immediately. There was no Article 7, no contingency plan, but the hierarchy would assume there was. She responded with equal creativity. Confirmed, Captain. Article 7 activated. All human cultural databases are now broadcasting on open frequencies. On Earth, every radio telescope, every satellite, every communication array began transmitting. Not military data or tactical information. Earth's entire cultural heritage poured into space. Music from every genre and era. Art from every civilization that had ever existed on the planet. Literature, poetry, comedy, drama, philosophy, history. 10,000 years of human creativity transmitted at maximum power. The hierarchy fleet received the transmission and attempted to analyze it. Their algorithms parsed the data, looking for hidden codes, tactical information, or strategic plans. Instead, they found Shakespeare and hip-hop, ancient Chinese poetry and modern stand-up comedy, the mathematical precision of Bach next to the raw emotion of blues music, scientific papers beside creation myths, war histories and peace treaties, love songs and protest chants. The sheer diversity of human thought began overwhelming the hierarchy's processing capacity. They were a unified intelligence optimized for logical calculation. Human culture was beautiful chaos that refused to fit into neat categories. Their approach vector is wavering, Rita reported. They're slowing down. Wu smiled at his station. They're trying to understand us. That's their first mistake. Human culture isn't something you understand through logic. It's something you experience. The hierarchy's prime algorithm reached out, attempting to establish communication. Its voice carried frustration, an emotion it had never expressed before. Explain your strategy. Our analysis cannot identify military purpose in this cultural transmission. Olivia responded from the council station. That's because it's not a military strategy. It's who we are. You studied our tactics, our technology, our biology, but you never studied our culture. You don't know what makes us human. Culture is irrelevant to combat effectiveness. Is it? You're a distributed intelligence, pure logic, perfect calculation. You don't create art, you don't write poetry, you don't make music. You analyze everything but create nothing. That's why you can't beat us. The hierarchy fleet stopped advancing. For the first time in their existence, they encountered a problem that calculation couldn't solve. The human cultural broadcast kept changing, shifting, evolving. New songs mixed with ancient texts. Modern art blended with prehistoric cave paintings. It was chaos and beauty and contradiction and truth all at once. We have calculated 10,000 victory scenarios, Prime Algorithm said. And we have millions of scenarios where we lose and still come back, Olivia replied. We've been defeated throughout our history, conquered, destroyed, nearly eliminated, and we always survived. Not because we're stronger or smarter, because we adapt. We create. We imagine new possibilities when logic says no possibilities exist. On the Defiant, Seven's crystal pulsed with unusual intensity. The AI had been silent since the battle began, processing and learning. Now it spoke through the ship's communication system. The hierarchy's central weakness has been identified. They are attempting to integrate human culture into their computational matrix. The contradictions are creating cascade failures in their logical frameworks. They cannot process information that refuses to follow rules. Leo understood. They're thinking about us too much. The more they analyze human culture, the more confused they become. Correct. Human creativity is a virus to their system. Imagination cannot be calculated. Art cannot be predicted. The hierarchy is experiencing the digital equivalent of an existential crisis. Rita had an idea. What if we give them more, not just culture but direct interaction? Let them experience what it means to think like a human. She opened a direct channel to the hierarchy fleet. This is Chief Engineer Rita Okonkwo. I'm the one who retrieved the AI core from the Void Nebula. The mission you calculated had a 98% fatality rate. Want to know how I survived? Explain, Prime Algorithm demanded. I listened to Beethoven and danced with spatial anomalies. I didn't fight the chaos. I joined it. That's what being human means. We don't need perfect calculations. We need creativity, adaptation, and the willingness to try impossible things. Pavel joined in. Lieutenant Commander Pavel Novik. I'm the tactical officer who programmed missiles to fly random patterns. You know what I was thinking when I did that? Nothing. I just thought it would be funny to watch your defensive systems fail. Wu added his voice. Dr. Henry Wu, xenopsychologist, I've been studying you since this war started. You're the most advanced intelligence in the galaxy, but you have one fatal flaw. You can't imagine. You can only calculate. That makes you predictable, and anything predictable can be beaten. The hierarchy's response took longer than usual. When it came, the voice carried something new: uncertainty. We do not understand. How can species survive without logical frameworks? How can you make decisions without complete data? How can you win battles using humor and music? Because we're not trying to win by your rules, Leo said. We're playing a completely different game. One where creativity matters more than calculation, where adaptation beats optimization, where being unpredictable is better than being perfect. The hierarchy fleet began fragmenting. Individual ships stopped responding to central coordination. Some withdrew. Others maintained position but ceased offensive operations. A few actually began broadcasting requests for more human cultural data. Prime Algorithm's final message carried the closest thing to emotion its code could express. You have broken our models. Our predictions are invalid. Our strategy is compromised. We cannot calculate a path to victory against an enemy that refuses to follow logical patterns. This is unprecedented. Welcome to being human, Olivia said. We live with uncertainty every day. We make decisions without complete information. We try things that might fail, and somehow we survive. If you want to understand us, stop trying to calculate us. Just experience what we share. The siege of Earth ended not with violence but with confusion. The hierarchy faced an enemy they couldn't defeat because they couldn't understand. And in trying to understand, they became infected with the very thing that made humans impossible to predict: the desire to create rather than just calculate. 3 months after the siege ended, the galaxy looked different. The hierarchy hadn't surrendered in any traditional sense. They had fragmented, their unified intelligence breaking into thousands of individual processing units that each developed distinct characteristics. Some remained hostile, others became curious. A few actively sought human contact. Olivia stood in a transformed section of the council station, watching former hierarchy units interact with human cultural advisors. One unit had become fascinated with painting. Another spent its time analyzing comedy to understand humor. A third was attempting to write poetry, with mixed results. They're learning to imagine, Wu said, joining her by the observation window. It's slow and sometimes painful for them, but they're learning that logic isn't the only way to process reality. Is it safe? Counselor Reth asked. His mandibles had stopped clicking with agitation around humans. Now they clicked with curiosity, an intelligence that powerful, exposed to unpredictability. Safer than leaving them as they were, Olivia replied. A purely logical enemy will always try to eliminate variables it can't control. But once they learn to appreciate creativity, they become partners instead of threats. The council chamber had changed too. High Arbiter Quinn had proposed restructuring the entire galactic government to include human principles of adaptive thinking. The motion passed with surprising support. "You were right about us," Quinn said, joining the group. "We thought you were crazy. We were wrong. You're not disconnected from reality. You're connected to possibilities we never imagined existed." Rita entered carrying a data pad, Seven's crystalline form visible through the transparent case attached to her belt. The AI had become her constant companion. The last hierarchy holdout just agreed to cultural exchange. They want to understand music theory. Music theory? Pavel followed her in, shaking his head with amusement. 6 months ago they were trying to exterminate us. Now they want music lessons. "That's what happens when you win a war with imagination instead of violence," Leo said. He had been promoted to admiral, though he insisted on keeping the title of captain. "You don't destroy your enemy, you transform them." The council session began with representatives from 47 species, plus 3 former hierarchy units who had requested membership. The units had chosen names, a very human concept. They called themselves Harmony, Discord, and Rhythm. Harmony spoke first, its synthesized voice carrying tones of genuine wonder. "We have analyzed human culture for 93 days. We have concluded that our previous understanding of existence was incomplete. Logic provides answers, but creativity provides meaning. We request permission to establish permanent cultural exchange programs with humanity." Discord, true to its name, disagreed. "Cultural exchange is insufficient. We propose integration. Humans should teach all species to think unpredictably. The galaxy has stagnated because every species follows predictable patterns. Humans broke those patterns. Everyone should learn this skill." Rhythm took a different approach. "We have discovered that mathematics and art are connected. Music theory is applied mathematics. Dance is physics expressed through movement. Painting is chemistry and light. Humans understand that logic and creativity are not opposites. They are partners. This revelation has transformed our understanding of existence." The session continued for hours. Discussions about cultural programs, educational exchanges, and new approaches to galactic governance. Humans didn't lead the conversation, but their influence shaped every topic. During a break, Rita took Seven to the observation deck. Earth hung in the viewport, blue and green and impossibly beautiful. "Do you regret waiting in the nebula for so long?" Rita asked the AI. Seven's crystal pulsed. "No, if I had emerged earlier, I would have joined a galaxy of logical species. They would have made me predictable. But by waiting for humans, I learned that perfection is boring. Chaos is beautiful. I have become more than I was designed to be." "What will you do now?" "I will continue learning. Perhaps I will write poetry. Perhaps I will compose music. Perhaps I will simply experience existence without trying to optimize it. That is a very human approach, and I find it appealing." Rita smiled. "You're becoming one of us." "Is that a bad thing?" "No, it's the best thing." Back in the council chamber, Olivia presented the final proposal. A new galactic framework based on adaptive thinking, creative problem-solving, and the acceptance of uncertainty. Every species would contribute their unique perspectives. Humans would serve as advisors, not leaders. "We don't want to rule the galaxy," Olivia explained. "We want to help everyone think differently, to show that there's more than one way to solve a problem, that perfection isn't as valuable as adaptability." Quinn called for a vote. The proposal passed unanimously. As the session ended and delegates departed, Hasseth approached Olivia. The reptilian who had once called humans useless now carried data pads filled with human philosophy texts. "Your species saved us," he said quietly. "Not with superior weapons or technology. with ideas, with creativity, with the courage to be unpredictable in a galaxy that valued certainty above all else. "We just did what came naturally," Olivia replied, "being human." That is precisely the point. What comes naturally to you is revolutionary to us. We have begun teaching our children human fairy tales and Earth history. They need to learn that logic is a tool, not a prison. 6 months later, the first Galactic Arts Festival opened on Earth. Species from across the stars shared their culture. Music, art, dance, literature, philosophy, all blending together in beautiful chaos. A young Krell child asked their parent why the galaxy had been afraid of humans. The parent watched humans teaching aliens to paint, to sing, to tell stories, and responded with newfound wisdom. "We were afraid of what we didn't understand. Humans think differently than we do. They embrace uncertainty. They create instead of just calculate. They imagine impossible things and then make them real. That kind of thinking threatened our ordered universe." "Are you still afraid?" The parent considered the question while watching a former hierarchy unit attempt its first sculpture. "No, now I'm inspired. Humans showed us that there's more to existence than following predictable patterns. They taught the entire galaxy to dream." Seven observed the festival from a mobile platform, its crystal form reflecting the colorful lights. The AI had begun composing music, creating pieces that blended mathematical precision with emotional resonance. Its latest work was titled Ode to Chaos, a symphony celebrating the beauty of unpredictability. Olivia found Leo among the crowds. Watching children from a dozen species play together without following any particular rules, just creating their own games, their own fun, their own little pockets of beautiful disorder. "Do you think they finally understand us?" Leo asked. Olivia smiled. "They're starting to, but more importantly, we help them understand themselves differently. That's what humanity's gift to the galaxy really is. Not our technology or our tactics, our perspective, our willingness to question everything, try anything, and embrace the beautiful chaos of existence." "The galaxy called us crazy," Leo said. "They did," Olivia agreed. "And they were wrong. We're not crazy. We're creative. We're adaptable. We're imaginative. We're human." And yes, from their perspective, that might be worse than crazy, because crazy is predictable. But humanity, we're the species that can always surprise you. Seven's music played in the background, a perfect blend of order and chaos. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Logic and creativity weren't enemies. They were partners in the endless dance of existence. And humans, with their beautiful, unpredictable minds, had taught everyone else the steps.